Ya, sambil kita mulai ya, Bu Rozaini, Bu
Bisa.
Sulis ya.
Ya.
Oke, ya, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang saya hormati Pak Mursa Juli selaku Wakil Dekan Bidang Akademik FKM UNDIP, Dr. Rozaini selaku narasumber pada kuliah tamu pada pagi hari ini, Bu Dr. Sulistiyani selaku moderator pada pagi hari ini, dan mahasiswa sekalian. Puji syukur ya, kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Pagi hari ini kita bisa melanjutkan berbagi ilmu terkait dengan tema-tema tentang toksikologi, yang kebetulan Dr. Rozaini ini juga banyak penelitian di food safety ya. Kemudian ini terima kasih sekali pada Dr. Mursa Juli ya, telah mengalokasikan pembiayaan dana bagi kita dalam pola pengembangan kerjasama visiting profesor ini, yang setiap tahun ya itu selalu kita laksanakan. Itu sebagai bentuk internasionalisasi dari kami untuk selalu kolaborasi dengan narasumber dari luar negeri. Sebelum nanti kita mulai, kami mohon arahan pengantar sekilas dari Pak Dr. Mursa Juli sebelum nanti sepenuhnya diserahkan kepada Dr. Sulistiyani untuk memandu acara kuliah tamu pada pagi hari ini. Untuk itu kami mohon yang terhormat Dr. Mursa Juli setelah memberikan pengantar terkait dengan kuliah kita pada pagi hari. Monggo Pak Mursa.
Terima kasih Pak Mursyid. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Yang saya hormati Prof. Zaini ya, Rozaini Abdullah. Ya. Tentu pertama-tama kita panjatkan puji syukur kehadirat Allah SWT pada kesempatan pagi hari ini kita bisa ya diberikan kesehatan, diberikan kekuatan sehingga bisa ikut kegiatan visiting profesor dalam rangka untuk meningkatkan ya wawasan pengetahuan daripada mahasiswa kita dan juga mungkin teman alumni yang ada, baik mahasiswa S1, S2, termasuk dosen mungkin yang bergabung. Saya ucapkan banyak terima kasih atas partisipasinya. Terutama kepada Pak Mursyid selaku Kaprodi, terima kasih sudah selalu mengawal ya kegiatan-kegiatan dalam rangka untuk meningkatkan suasana akademik bagi mahasiswa. Dan alhamdulillah Prof. Rozaini, kita ini prodi Kesehatan ini akreditasinya unggul kalau di Indonesia istilahnya gitu. Jadi excellent accreditation. Namun demikian ya kita tetap harus menjaga iklim akademis yang ada di program studi dengan mengadakan kegiatan visiting profesor yang memang ini merupakan kegiatan yang merupakan salah satu indikator di dalam rencana kita, rencana strategis kita. Oleh karena itu, apapun yang terjadi, kegiatan visiting profesor ini harus tetap jalan terus ya setiap tahun. Dan alhamdulillah Pak Mursyid selaku Kaprodi sudah menjalin kerjasama dengan beberapa perguruan tinggi di Malaysia, terutama ya diawali dengan sesepuh kita Prof. Jamal gitu. Saya bilang sesepuh karena memang awalnya Prof. Jamal ini yang intens ya komunikasi dengan program studi kita ini. Kemudian yang lainnya juga ada. Oleh karena itu sekali lagi terima kasih Prof. Zaini atas waktunya nanti berikan ilmu kepada ya adik-adik mahasiswa kita dan juga teman-teman alumni dan mahasiswa yang bergabung di ruang Zoom ini. Kepada panitia ya saya ucapkan banyak terima kasih dan mohon nanti Bu Sulis nanti yang akan jadi moderator. Terima kasih Bu Sulis atas waktunya di tengah-tengah kesibukan beliau yang luar biasa gitu ya. Dan mudah-mudahan pertemuan kita hari ini bisa berjalan dengan lancar gitu. Saya kira begitu Pak Mursyid pengantar saya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Dr. Mursa Juli memberikan pengantar. Untuk berikutnya, saya serahkan sepenuhnya ke Bu Dr. Sulistiyani memandu acara pada pagi hari ini. Kita akan berlangsung sekitar 1,5 sampai 2 jam ya, tergantung dari diskusi kita. Tapi waktu cukup untuk kegiatan pada pagi hari ini. Untuk berikutnya, monggo Bu Dr. Sulistiyani, kami silakan.
Terima kasih Pak Mursid dan Pak Nur Zazuli. Ya, Bapak, Ibu, dan hadirin sekalian, selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Pagi ini kita akan ikut mengikuti kuliah dari Profesor Rozaini binti Abdullah PhD ERT. Yang sebenarnya beliau waktu itu juga sudah pernah memberikan kuliah juga untuk visiting professor ini. Prof. Rozaini ini keahliannya di toksikologi lingkungan ya Prof ya, terkait mungkin dengan food safety juga. Nah, beliau saya bacakan sedikit CV Prof. Rozaini binti Abdullah. Beliau berasal dari Department of Environmental and Occupational Health, Faculty of Medicine and Health Science, University Putra, Malaysia. And juga dia aktif di Natural Medicine and Product Research Laboratory Institute of Bioscience, University of Putra, Malaysia. Prof. Rozaini ini S1 ya, S1-nya Bachelor of Environmental Health dari University Kebangsaan Malaysia, kemudian masternya di Master in Health Science, Biomedical Science di University Kebangsaan Malaysia, dan PhD in Toxicology dari Wageningen University, the Netherlands, serta European Registered Toxicologists-nya, ERT-nya ini adalah European Registered Toxicologists. Nah, terakhir Prof. Rozaini baru saja pulang dari Taiwan mengikuti International Congress of Asian Society of Toxicology sebagai invited speaker. Kemudian juga beliau juga aktif menjadi speaker juga di webinar series 25 on toxicology risk assessment of herbal product and plant food supplement containing genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals. Kemudian juga sebagai visiting lecturer di Walaika University Thailand, dan di Indonesia khususnya di Universitas Diponegoro juga sebagai visiting lecturer. Kemudian beliau juga aktif di beberapa kongres ya di Tokyo tahun 2021. Kemudian juga di Malaysian Congress ya tahun 2017 dan banyak lagi sebelumnya ya. Kemudian untuk professional affiliation-nya beliau sebagai sebagai presiden pada Asian Society of Toxicology, kemudian 2021 sampai sekarang beliau adalah interim associate researcher at the Natural Medicine and Product Research Laboratory Institute of Bioscience UPM, kemudian juga dari 2021 hingga sekarang di Malaysian Society of Toxicology sebagai presiden juga, dan ikut dalam task force member study on strengthening the environmental governance in Malaysia under Academy of Science Malaysia. Kemudian sampai saat ini dari tahun 2020 menjadi panel of expert in first human clinical research National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency Ministry of Health Malaysia. Tahun 2019 sampai sekarang beliau juga di Young Scientist Network Academy of Science Malaysia affiliate. Kemudian banyak lagi yang lain termasuk dari 2018 sampai saat ini di Expert Committee of the Jelly Confectionery Under Food Regulation Advisory Committee 1985 di Ministry of Health Malaysia. Ya, kemudian beliau juga mendapatkan banyak penghargaan ya, grants ataupun awards ya. Dari Putra Research Grant by University Putra Malaysia to conduct study on risk assessment of pyrrolizidine alkaloids from Malaysian traditional medicine and herbal supplement sebagai principal investigator. Kemudian juga mendapatkan fellowship to attend the international training course on fundamental of risk assessment and application of risk assessment paradigma for solving real world problem granted by Kula Brown Research Institute Thailand. Dan juga masih banyak lagi yang lain, beliau mendapatkan penghargaan ataupun grant ya. Selanjutnya ini ada beberapa penelitian project ya untuk postgraduate supervision sebagai pembimbing di postgraduate ya. Untuk judulnya Food Toxicology and Safety Assessment of Plant Food Supplement Containing Aristotleic Acid in Rats ya. Kemudian juga ada food combining cytotoxic data with physiological base kinetic modeling to define dose response curve for Aristotleic acid in mice juga ya, pada tikus ini. Ada beberapa yang terkait juga dengan Aristotleic acid ini. Di sini juga ada risk assessment of plant food supplement containing Aristotleic acid. Kemudian juga terkait dengan selective toxicity of Aristotleic acid in DNA dark conformation. Ya, jadi ini apa namanya? Specifically Aristotleic acid ya, Prof. Rozaini ini ya. Tertariknya lebih banyak ke arah Aristotleic acid ini. Ataupun juga yang terkait dengan masalah toksikologinya. Ya, kemudian juga beliau aktif mempublish hasil-hasil karyanya. Terakhir tahun 2022 beliau mempublish tentang Aflatoxin B1 reported in Herbal and Traditional Medicine and its Assessment di Malaysian Journal Medical Health Science. Kemudian juga tahun 2022 minimal invasive sampling source for quality and quantity of DNA for telomere length measurement di Malaysian Journal Medical Health Science juga. Dan tahun 2021 juga aktif beberapa. Jadi 1 tahun itu bisa menghasilkan beberapa publikasi ya Prof ya. Ini sangat inspiratif sekali untuk kami-kami yang ada di Universitas Diponegoro. Jadi banyak sekali, bahkan ada dalam 1 tahun itu bisa lebih dari 2 ini Prof. Ada tahun 2021 itu ternyata banyak sekali publikasinya. Ya, demikian yang bisa kita sampaikan untuk CV daripada Prof. Rozaini binti Abdullah ini. Dari Prof. Rozaini sendiri, sehat Prof hari ini Prof?
Alhamdulillah sehat.
Posisi di Kuala Lumpur atau di mana Prof?
Di UPM, di Putra.
UPM.
Ya.
Oke. Ya. Kami persilahkan Prof untuk menyampaikan materinya. Nanti kalau misalnya terlalu lama bisa jeda dulu, istirahat atau diskusi dulu, silahkan. Yang mana yang membuat Prof nyaman untuk menyampaikan. Saya persilahkan waktu dan Zoom-nya.
Okey, terima kasih Ibu Sulistiyani. Okey, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wasahbihi ajma'in. Sebelum saya mulakan kuliah tamu pada hari ini, izinkan saya untuk menyampaikan kuliah ini dalam bahasa Inggeris. Boleh?
Campur-campur.
Ya, silakan. Nanti penontonnya.
Karena jika dalam bahasa Indonesia itu kurang fasih.
Iya.
Tapi ya bisa campur.
Melayu bahasa Inggris.
Ya. Okay. Let me share my screen. Sebentar ya. Okay. Sebentar ya.
Ya.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. First of all, thanks to Ibu Sulis for your kind introduction. It's a very long introduction, but I'm just a normal person. I'm not yet a professor. I'm still in the field. Saya ni baru lagi. Kalau di Malaysia itu dipanggilnya budak baru belajar. Gitu. Jadi saya adalah I'm a senior lecturer at Universitas Putra, Malaysia. But what Ibu Sulis told everyone, I'm currently a president of Malaysian Society of Toxicology, and at the same time I'm also hold a position for Asian Society of Toxicology. Jadi bila Pak Mursid this is not the first time that we met. Okay, we met last year, and then I also give a lecture for UNDIP last year also for the students, which I will talk more about that later. And also thank you so much Pak Mursid for the invitation. I'm very humble to share a little bit of my knowledge and also what we are doing for toxicology, especially when we talk about risk assessment of natural genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals, especially from herbal products and plant food supplements, because in Malaysia and also Indonesia we use a lot. Okay, sepertinya jamu, jadi herbal products, we use it like every day, because people think that all naturals are equal to safe. But this is not the case when we talk about natural genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals that present naturally in this kind of product. Okay, this is the agenda of today. Okay, I have 5 different subchapters in my lecture. First, I will go for the introduction, and then we go the second one on the natural toxin in the food chain. I'm going to introduce you what is natural toxins, what are the toxins that might have in our food chain. And then the third one will be on the situation of toxicological concern. And because I believe that not everyone really, I don't know the level of understanding of toxicology for you guys, or especially among students, but I'll try my best to make it simple so that you can understand the basic or the fundamental part of this kind of project. And then I'm going to talk more about the strategies, the risk assessment strategies, and what are the research in progress for my team. All right. And then last but not least, I will give a concluding remarks. So if you are, feel tired or you don't understand in any part of my lecture, so please welcome. We can stop in the middle of the lecture, no problem at all. And that if you have question, you can just raise your hands, or or just post your question in the chat box, no problem at all. Or if you have question in Bahasa, also possible. I will try my best to answer in also Bahasa. I'll try my best. If not, Pak Mursid and also Dr. Sulis can help me to translate. Okay. So let's move to the first part. So this is the lecture that I gave last year. Okay, where we talk about the toxicology as a basic principle in health risk assessment. And from last year, we have like more than 100 students and also staff that joined us. And anyone that joined us last year, you can just raise your hands, or make some emoticons, or just put some emotions that you joined us last year. So but last year when we had a lecture last year on Saturday, hari Minggu, hari cuti ya. Jadi ini adalah soalan pertama yang saya tanya kepada pelajar. And what do you feel? But the first, we can see the biggest cloud, which is some of the students majority of the students feel good, feel great, feel excited, and some of them feel sleepy, and also feel tired, and because it was Saturday. But I hope that everyone that joined us today will be benefits, and you are still very excited to learn more about this, about toxicology, and especially in research regarding herbal product and plant food supplements. And another question that I asked during the lecture was, I want the students to write down what do you understand about toxicology, one word to describe toxicology. And majority of the students, understand, at least know what is toxicology, a study about poison, a study about toxic chemicals, complication about how chemical can cause adverse effects, for example, to human and also to environment. So this is already a good start, okay, to know that, okay, so everyone has a basic fundamental concept, understand about the fundamental concept of toxicology, especially when we talk about Paracelsus, which is the father of toxicology, when he said that all substances are poison, there is none which is not a poison. The right dose differentiate poisons from remedy. So the keywords here is the dose makes the poison. But later, during my lecture, you will understand that it's not only dose that matters. Okay, jadi kita akan ada sedikit paradigma. We need to move forward. We are not talking only about dose. We are also talking about the mechanism of the chemical that cause toxicity. All right, if you understand about the dose make it poison, that's good enough. But when you do research about toxicology, and then you also need to understand that this is not only about dose, this is also about the mechanism. How does one chemical cause toxicity? And this mechanism will impact, even though it's very low dose, it also will cause toxicity. All right. But if you understand about this Paracelsus fundamental concept of toxicology, that's enough. That's good for toxicology, to learn toxicology. But when we go for detail, so you will understand that dose is not everything. All right. So the second part, I'm going to talk about the natural toxins in the food chain. When we talk about natural toxin in the food chain, there are a lot of chemicals in our food chain. Okay, we are talking about the food safety here. So for example, we have mycotoxin. When I talk about mycotoxin, meaning that it is a toxin. This is chemical that comes from fungi or molds. So for example, if you look at this picture, jagung or corn that is contaminated with mold or fungi, and then this fungi produce one toxin called aflatoxin. And this aflatoxin is a class 1 carcinogen. When we talk about class 1 carcinogen, meaning that we know that we have enough evidence saying that this chemical causes cancer in human. The second class of natural toxin, which I will talk more about this, which is the phytotoxins, which is the toxins that comes from plants. All right, so this is naturally come from plants. So it is not man-made. So it is there because of the species of the plant. For example, this is come from, for example, there is one plant, this species, specifically this species have this kind of toxin. So we will talk more about this later. And we also have the phycotoxins. So this is the chemical comes from the marine algae. All right, for example, we have the seafoods. Okay, that seafood that that contaminated with algae, and this also marine algae exposed. We are exposed to phycotoxin, and this marine algae will cause, for example, the neuro problem in human. Very popular toxins, which is the botulinum toxins or Botox. Okay, Botox, if you know that, okay, kalau kita ada muka yang ada wrinkle, so kita cicuk dengan Botox. So untuk bagi tegang, bagi cantik, bagi awet muda. Jadi this is toxins. So the dose, okay, some dose, a specific dose will cause benefits to human, but a specific dose also cause a toxicity to human. Because these toxins, if you are overdose, it can kill. You can die because of this toxin. And another important toxin, for example, animal toxins from this ikan buntal. I don't know Indonesian call
buntal.
Ikan buntal juga.
Yeah,
Jadi Malaysia juga sama ikan buntal. Ikan buntal ini sangat toxic, alright, kerana ia mengandungi tetrodotoxin, and jika tidak dibersihkan or if you don't clean it, the toxin very well from the fish, and then you can die because of this toxin. And we had a big case in Malaysia earlier this year, where people consume this fish. They don't know this is, they say that they don't know this is ikan buntal, but 2 people, elderly people, die because of consumption of this fish. So we really need to be very careful about chemicals, especially, okay, we talk about man-made chemicals. We have like mercury, arsenic, for example, comes from industrial area, but we also need to take care about the natural toxins that comes from the alami, from the nature. Okay. And next, we are going to talk more about the phytotoxins, where we talk about phytotoxins. We need to talk about the bioactive compounds in the plant, because these bioactive compounds in the plant are very important. For example, it will give a flavor, a specific flavor. For example, if you have a smoky flavor, for example. So this come from herbs and spice that we use a lot in our food, in our cooking, for example. Okay, kita masukkan rempah untuk menyedapkan, okay, untuk memberikan rasa kepada makanan kita. And also, there are a lot of health benefits, for example, from fruits and vegetables. There are all bioactive compounds that come from this kind of fruits and also vegetables that cause benefits to us. For example, the antioxidants, all the vitamins, all of these bioactive compounds are important for health. But also at the same time, we also use bioactive compounds, for example, in medicine. So for example, I believe that semua pernah makan aspirin ataupun paracetamol. Okay, for example, for aspirin, so ataupun acetyl salicylic acid, this aspirin comes from plant, which is the willow or salix plant, and this plant has the property of cyclooxygenase inhibitor. And you feel, if you have pain, you feel pain, and then we consume this aspirin, and then it will reduce the pain and also inflammation effects. So all of these bioactive compound in the plants are benefits, cost benefits to human. We use it a lot for example, in our medicine. And also the level of these bioactive compounds are different, depends on the portion of the plant and the age of the plant. So for example, if you take the plant, if you take from the bark ataupun daripada dia punya dahan, and if you take from the akar pokok itu, the level of this bioactive compound is different. Perhaps some plants has more bioactive compounds in the leaf ataupun daripada daunnya, the down of the plant itself, but perhaps some of the compound may deposited highly in the bark of the plant. And also the age of the plant also will influence the level of bioactive compounds. And of course, the climate and also the soil condition is very important if you want to do research in this kind of field. So if you go for the field and then you go for sampling, you need to take care about all of these parameters. And also the genetics or intra-species differences. So for example, the star anise, so it has different type of star anise ataupun bunga lawang. Kalau di Malaysia itu panggilnya bunga lawang. Okay, there are different type of star anise. So this is the case that happened in the Netherlands, where 8 people were hospitalized after drinking of the star anise tea. Okay, this is star anise. I think we in Indonesia also use a lot of star anise. So they have 2 types of star anise. For example, we have Japanese and also Chinese. So the problem cause is actually not from the Chinese star anise, it's actually come from Japanese star anise, where this Japanese star anise cause problem. For example, it inhibit GABA receptors that cause, for example, seizures and also epileptic attacks. So this is because of, even though it's look similar, but because of the intra-species differences, and these intra-species differences cause the exposure of specific bioactive compound, for example, in this case for Japanese star anise. And high dose also cause serious side effects for the people that consume this kind of tea. Then we talk about the toxicological concern. So when is actually we need to really take care of. So especially, for example, the first one is when we handle it in an incorrect way. For example, if we handle specific chemicals in an incorrect, for example, temperature, it can cause seperti case the presence of the aflatoxin in the corn. If you don't control the temperature, okay, jika suhunya tidak betul, when you keep or you save the corn, so the mold might grow, and then when the mold grow, and then there might be the risk for exposure or the exposure of this kind of aflatoxin B1. Or with improper food handling, for example, it can cause, for example, toxic, the production of toxic proteins and also solanins. For example, this is when we store the foods in a not correct temperature, this kind of protein and also solanins, and these are toxic chemicals, might expose to. We might expose to this kind of toxic chemicals. And another situations of toxicological concerns is famine food. So famine foods, for example, the ubi kayu, okay, ataupun cassava, okay. This is the foods that been consumed for the people that have problem. For example, kita tak ada cukup makanan, okay, people consume this cassava, and this cassava contain the high cyanide, and this cyanide cause problem, for example, in the delivery of the oxygens. All right. And we will talk about more about supplements. Okay. For example, the glucosinolates, I have example after this for glucosinolates and also alkylbenzene. Because of what? For the supplements, why we are very concerned about supplements, because usually for supplements, the level of chemicals are much more higher, because kita concentrate the chemicals into one tablet. All right. And then, okay, we talk about that later. And also, it is also a concern for people that has specific sensitive, or for example, some people are sensitive to allergens or the fava, or can cause the, for people that has a problem, for example, the G6PD deficiency. If you have G6PD deficiency, then you will have low level of glutathione that cause problem if you consume specific type of plants. All right. And also, we also talk about the new development where we consume a lot of herbal tea. Okay, kita di Asia memang gemar tea. Okay, kita minum teh. Okay, teh ni the risiko untuk exposure to one kind of chemical which is known as pyrrolizidine alkaloid that present naturally in many type of plants. Then if you consume it regularly, exceed the limits, then you will have a problem with exposure or toxic effect of this kind of chemicals. So in this lecture, we are going to talk more about the supplements and the herbal teas. So why supplements? Okay, because it is a raised concern because due to overconsumptions by particular groups, and sometimes it's simulated by the companies for the that making the misleading claim on the website or in their literature. For example, they say, okay, boleh minum makan produk ini, if you consume this product, you will be healthier, you akan sihat, you akan mencegah diri daripada kena penyakit yang, you know, the chronic disease, for example. And people, if you, for general public, you know, people, if they just believe, okay, with the iklan, with all the claims that, for example, from the Facebook, from the TikTok, in Malaysia, very popular with TikTok, I believe in Indonesia, the same things. So people talk about, okay, they say that, okay, when I consume this, I feel very strong, I feel healthy, it can reduce weight, for example, very short period of time. And then people consume it, no, not following, for example, the level that is permitted, for example. So this is raising a concern, and many people equates that natural with safe, especially when considering the plant food supplements. Yeah, because they don't want to take the medications from hospital because they say that it is not natural. So, and they think that all naturals are safe, but this is not the case when we talk about genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals that come naturally from the plants. All right, but this is normal, but this is generally what people percaya. They believe that all naturals are safe. But I hope that towards the end of this lecture, you will understand that why not all naturals are safe. And also because this kind of products are easily available. For example, you can directly buy from the internet and also over the counter, especially where the regulations, where from the country that regulations are not in place. All right. So, and also because it is easily available, and you can just go to the shop and then buy it. And that's why this is a raising concern. And also the fact that most of the plant food supplements and for herbal product, they have a stringent, at least on the safety and quality of the product. But for the plant food supplements, there is no detailed requirements on the safety and quality of the products. All right, this is not only in Malaysia, but this is also the worldwide problem. And I believe in Indonesia also has the same problem. And there are a lot of adverse effects cases due to the consumptions of plant food supplements. And because of this, safety are not generally assessed. So that's why we need to be very careful, especially when we talk about when we consume supplements that contain unknown plants and we don't know what inside the supplement itself. So the reason for toxicity, because first is it is a naturally present in the toxic chemicals. All right, for example, these are the chemicals that are naturally present in the plants. For example, I'll talk about the tea, for example, contain the pyroxidine alkaloid, Alkylbenzene, I have example later. And for example, we also has phytoestrogen. We talk about the soy product, isoya. In Malaysia, we call it isoya. So it contains the phyto or the natural estrogen that might has the problem if we consume it is not in a safe level. That will, when we consume this phytoestrogen, we also have our natural estrogen, then it will cause a problem. You know, akan ada perkara yang pelik bila kita minum ataupun makan estrogen daripada luar, for example. So our body will interact, you know, we're confused about the estrogen that being present in the body. And some of the reason for toxicity is actually on the replacement of the harmless variety with a toxic alternative. Okay, when Ibu Sulis talk about the Aristotleic acid, so this is actually my biggest interest. Okay, when we talk about this Aristotleic acid, which I also will introduce to you about this chemical later, where many young people, young women suffer from the kidney damage and also kidney need to undergo the kidney transplant due to exposure to this kind of product because of the lost weight supplements. And we will talk about that later. And also the adulteration of during the preparation, for example, the exposure, for example, to the heavy metals or during the preparations, and also the contaminations during, for example, during the preparation of this kind of supplements. For example, we might be exposed to polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons if the process of these plant supplements need the burning process, for example. So these are the reasons of toxicity of the supplements, especially when we talk about the plant food supplements. And this is the example of glucosinolates. So this is one of the bioactive chemical that present naturally in this kind of plants. You can get the glucosinolates in the Brussels sprouts, in broccoli, in wasabi, in mustard. And this is the structure of the glucosinolates. And people, because this glucosinolates, it has a benefits, health benefits, okay, as a general. But when people concentrate this kind of bioactive compound in the tablet, so you can imagine that if, for example, if you took just one broccoli and it contained 1 microgram of glucosinolates, but in one tablet might contain 100 microgram of glucosinolates. So this is where the problem occur, right? So when we talk about glucosinolates, is the risks and benefits should be very careful, because these glucosinolates has a property of anti-cancer, and also at the same time, it also causes genotoxic adverse effects. And in toxicology, like what I said in the beginning, it's not only about dose. You also need to understand about the mechanism. How does this one chemical cause toxicity? So for example, in this case, so we need to understand the metabolism of the chemical. So when people consume these glucosinolates, so upon the metabolism, it will produce this, for example, acylthiocyanates and also thiocyanates. And these thiocyanates will inhibit the iodide intake, and especially from and cause the goiter effects. So something like this, the goiter. So if we consume this kind of products, all right, and or overconsume this kind of products, so we might have this kind of thiocyanates or acylthiocyanates, and these metabolites cause effects because it inhibit the iodide intakes, and then if it inhibit the iodide intakes, then people will suffer from the goiter. So meaning that here, so when we talk about supplements, so usually, for example, if normally we took we took the plants itself, so it costs benefits. But if we talk about when we took one tablet of the supplement, for example, so this is where the assessment need to be conducted. The risk assessment need to be conducted. Either it will, you need to weigh either the risk or benefit of one product. Another example, for example, alkylbenzene. So this alkylbenzene is actually, if you love to eat, for example, pasta, what do you call that? There's one type of pasta, pesto pasta, for example. Okay, ada banyak basil product, all right? So this basil is not only in pasta, yeah? Okay, there are also other type of plants that contain alkylbenzene. And these basils, okay, naturally is okay, but when it is concentrated, for example, in a tablet, so this is the main bioactive compound, for example, the estragol and methylogenol, and these chemicals, and there are also other congeners of alkylbenzene, is a genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals. So you can imagine that if you consume this alkylbenzene unintentionally or intentionally, and then you might have a risk to get problems, and also perhaps in later years of your life that you get cancer due to exposure to this kind of chemicals. And perhaps some of you don't really understand about what is actually the genotoxic. What does it mean by genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals? All right, why I'm very interested, I'm very into the genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals, because so this is very general, the difference between genotoxic and non-genotoxic chemicals. So for example, in this picture, you can see that if we are exposed to genotoxic chemical, so generally we are exposed to chemical that cause direct effects to our DNA, all right, and then cause problem, for example, DNA damage, all right, and from DNA damage, if our DNA cannot be repaired, and then there will be a next damage, and then there will be mutation, and then there will be after mutation specific, after a few times of mutation, and then it will lead to cancer formation. And for this kind of chemical, for genotoxic chemicals, there is no threshold. So when we talk about no threshold, so meaning that the safe exposure level does not exist. So the margin of exposure cannot be determined. So meaning that here, supposedly, we cannot be exposed to any type of genotoxic chemicals, because you know that sekali you expose, so you have the tendency to get cancer due to the exposure to this kind of genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals, different than the non-genotoxic chemicals. So if you expose to non-genotoxic chemicals, so it will metabolize, or the metabolism or the mode of action will be from other type of mode of action, for example, the methylation, if you are familiar with, meaning that our gene or our genetic sequence are methylated in specific codon, for example, okay, and then cause a problem later also in our, and also non-genotoxic also can cause cancer, but at least for non-genotoxic, we can, there is a threshold and we can at least determine the safe exposure level. All right. So I hope that you are familiar with this dose response curve. If you don't understand, please let me know, because this is also very basic about toxicology when we talk about the dose and response. All right. So this is dose response curve. So if you look at this first one, so this is the for genotoxic chemicals, which is the straight line. All right. So meaning that if you can see, this is the dose and this is the response. Once you're exposed to although at a lower dose, you will have a response. All right. Different than the non-genotoxic chemicals. All right. If you're exposed to a lower dose, there is no response. All right. And only a specific dose, for example, has a response. So meaning that this is when we talk about what are the level of safety, it all depends on the what are the difference in terms of statistically different as compared to negative control. So meaning that if you're exposed to non-genotoxic chemicals, so at least you can have a safe exposure limits. All right, for the safe exposure limits, this is how you can calculate. So you can calculate based on the tolerable daily intake, where you can use the no observed adverse effects level or NOEL. Or you can use the benchmark dose lower level of 10 divided by 100. And you can calculate the margin of safety or margin of exposure based on the tolerable daily intake divided by the estimated daily intake. So this is the margin of safety for the non-genotoxic chemicals. So how about the genotoxic chemicals? So this is where we are interested with, because we know that in the plant, so it comes naturally. So it's not we put the chemical inside the supplements, but because it comes from the species, it's come from the plant itself. So how can we do this assessment for the chemical that has the straight line or the dose response curve like this? Okay. Example, talk about the aflatoxin B1. And for aflatoxin B1, for example, in the corn product, this is, I think, in Ministry of Health, and also I believe that Indonesia also monitor the level of aflatoxin B1 in corn or in grains product, because we cannot have this kind of chemicals in our food products. So when we talk about aflatoxin, okay, kita perlu tahu the mode of action or the mechanism. How does this aflatoxin cause, for example, liver cancer? So from aflatoxin B1 can be metabolized to this epoxide. So this is the structure of epoxide, and this epoxide has a very high affinity to bind to a DNA, to our DNA, and then cause mutation in the hotspot P53, and also that produce the tumor suppressor gene that induce the tumor suppressor gene, and also cause a liver cancer later. And this is another example for carcinogens, which is naturally present. For example, the pyrolyzidine alkaloid, it has a lot of varieties of plants that contain this kind of products, and it can be found also in the honey and also in the tea. And this chemical, for example, lasiocarpine is one type of pyrolyzidine alkaloid, can be metabolized to this kind of chemical. And when our body exposed to this kind of chemical, produce the adult, and if the adult are not being repaired, and then it will lead to a tumor and also liver necrosis. So another example that is my favorite, which is the Aristotleic acids that I taught in the earlier of my talk today. So this is Aristotleic acid, comes from a plant from Aristolochiaceae plants. All right. So this is the plant that people took it as a natural remedies to cure a specific type of disease. And then people took the supplements containing Aristolochia, or for example, in this case, it's the Stephania root. And then these women, generally women want to lose weight, they took this kind of supplements. All right. This what happened in Belgium in around 1990s. All right. So for this kind of plants, supposedly containing Stephania tetranda, but it was mistakenly, accidentally changed or replaced with aristolochic acids, because both of these chemical use the same Chinese nomenclature, which is a fungi. Okay, both Stephania tetranda and also the aristolochic acids in Chinese name is fungi. All right, and because of this, in less than 10 years, so many young women suffer from the kidney disease, and some of them need to do a kidney transplantation. And this is not normal, because if the people, human or people has a kidney problem, usually it's later in their life, for example, after 50 years, 60 years. But this is very young women, around 20 to 30 years old of women suffer from this disease. And later they found out this is due to consumption of supplements containing aristolochic acids. And these are the cases of aristolochic acids nephropathy around the world. So we have many cases in Belgium, because this is where the explosion. All right. We also have a problem, the case in the US and also in Asia. In China, there are a lot, because there's also association with the Balkan endemic nephropathy, where this plant is actually grow a lot in the Balkan area. How about in Asia? How about in Malaysia and Indonesia? So we also conducted, I will talk about that because we conducted a study on these aristolochic acids in our country, and we found positive samples, even though in our regulations it's already banned. So we cannot sell any supplements containing aristolochic acids in our market, but we can still find the supplements containing these products. And the big question is, it's why. All right, kenapa ada lagi produk yang contain these acids in our market? And we don't have, I think we don't have yet data from Indonesia for aristolochic acid, or we do have. So I need to check on that. But in our study, we found a positive samples. All right. And this is not problem only in Belgium. It is a worldwide problem. Okay. Because of supplements can be sold via online. So kita boleh dapat daripada Shopee, you know, it's easily accessible. If our regulations say that we cannot sell over the counter, but we can buy it from other countries that perhaps the regulation is not there. So that's why we really need to be careful about, we need to do assessment. Is it our population are at risk due to consumption of this kind of products? And when we talk about aristolochic acids, like what I said, we need to understand about the mode of action of chemicals. So this chemical, when we expose to this kind of chemical, it can undergo the metabolic activation and then produce a drug. It will bind to our DNA, and these chemicals is very persistent in our body, especially in kidney. So that's why a lot of people suffered from kidney disease due to exposure to this kind of chemical. And then it is, because it is persistent, when I talk about it's persistent, it cannot be metabolized to other, to break down into other part and then being eliminated from the body. And then it causes mutation, and finally it causes cancer to human. So that's why we need to understand about how much people consume, and then why and how does one chemical cause toxicity to human. All right. So this is the first three sub-chapter before I go to my research in progress, or our current research. So before I go to the next part, any question from the floor? Ada soalan?
Ada.
Ataupun ada benda yang, anything that you don't understand about my lecture?
Para peserta hadirin, apakah ada yang mau ditanyakan terkait dengan tadi yang sudah dijelaskan oleh Ibu Rozaini Abdullah? Mulai dari tadi ada basil ya Bu ya.
Betul.
Kemudian ada fungi nih ya, yang aristolatic.
Yang fungi itu aflatoxin.
Aflatoxin ya. Kemudian yang aristolochic acid ini, itu dari tumbuhan Stephania, Bu.
Dia sebenarnya daripada spesies Aristolosiaceae family.
Oh, Aristolosia.
Aristolosiaceae family. And I believe that we have that plant in Malaysia. Okay,
Yeah.
Stephania tetranda is another species, but it because of nama Chinese-nya sama, fengqi, for these two type of plant. So sebab itulah ada masalah di situ. Okay, sebab the Chinese name is similar, fengqi, and then people don't know what type of fengqi that they consume. Jadi di sinilah perkara yang perlu kita titik berat, especially when dealing with this kind of supplements.
Oke, ya. Ini ada pertanyaan di chat, Bu Rozaini.
Ya.
Bagaimana upaya pemerintah khususnya di Malaysia dalam pengawasan bahan berbahaya, terutama yang diduga sebagai bahan karsinogen pada herbal yang dijual di pasaran bebas ya. Mungkin terkait dengan regulatory atau yang lain ya. Apa perdagangan bebasnya misalnya di Shopee tadi Bu Rozaini cerita bisa didapatkan dengan mudah di Shopee begitu. Mari silahkan Bu.
Oke, jadi di Malaysia, jadi kita ada dua, we have two different types. So we have plant food supplements and we also have has herbal products. So when one product is considered as a plant food supplements, okay, jika satu produk itu adalah supplements, dia tidak, it has different type of regulatory bodies that take care of. Okay, kerana ada satu produk yang tidak perlu menjalani safety assessment yang detail. Okay, jadi bila supplements itu tidak, when there's chemicals that are not needed by our regulatory, there's no safety assessment needed, so that's why it's easily available. But if you talk about the pengawasan bahan berbahaya or carcinogen, okay, when we talk, for example, in Aristotleic acids, we already have that in our regulations, because in our national pharmaceutical drugs, the regulator, the NPRA say that, okay, tak boleh, tak bisa jual, adalah totally banned. Okay, so kalau jumpa memang akan penjara, akan ada didenda. Okay. Okay, tapi when we talk about when we sell via, for example, Shopee, it's different challenge. Okay, of course, I don't know if the regulator do monitoring for the online shop, but for the over the counter, of course, they do yearly monitoring about this kind of product. But when we talk about the other products, for example, the Alkylbenzene, the pyroxene alkaloid, so there is none of regulations to control the exposure of this kind of products. So that's why our team, my team in Malaysia, is very eager, and we are really into it, because we know that this is important, and we want people to understand that, okay, even though it's natural, it's not safe, because we might contain the chemical, or the supplement itself might contain this kind of products. Tapi when we talk about Aristotleic acid, yes, it's already in our regulations, but not the other type of products. For Aflatoxin, yes, we have, but only for the food products, right? Not the supplements. Tapi kita juga, we also found positive samples based on for the Aflatoxin level in the plant food supplements. Saya harap saya menjawab ya persoalan lagi.
Iya. Jadi sudah ada regulatory atau peraturan yang terkait dengan Aristotleic acid tadi ya.
Betul.
Tapi untuk yang lain belum. Itu ya untuk itu di Aristotleic acid itu untuk peraturan di suplemen atau di food?
Semua.
Di semuanya.
Di drugs lah. Basically di supplements lah.
Di suplemen ya. Oke.
Yeah.
Tapi masih kita bisa dapatkan bebas di pasaran juga ya, Bu Rozaini?
Dia, okay, based on our study, okay, we found positive samples that we buy from somewhere else.
Oh,
okay. Jadi kalau kita nak dapat di counter tu perhaps agak sukar, tetapi it's still possible. Okay. Itulah. Jadi itulah when we talk about supplements and herbal products, it's very challenging it's not easy. It's not only in Malaysia or Indonesia, but also the whole world, because of
Yeah.
the safety assessment is not needed, for example, okay,
Yeah.
for the supplements. So
Yeah.
itulah masalah yang perlu kita fikirkan, sama-sama fikirkan macam mana untuk mengurangkan risiko dedahan terhadap produk yang sebegini.
Ya. Kalau Indonesia itu biasanya ke Malaysia itu ke Penang untuk
Penang.
berobat ya, atau ada just tip.
Melaka ya?
Iya, just tip ke Penang tuh untuk beli obat. Mungkin termasuk salah satu suplemen ini ya. Kalau saya lihat itu mereka just tip, membuka just tip kalau pergi ke Penang untuk resep dokter juga bisa. Jadi ada yang sudah berobat ke Penang, kemudian kembali ke Indonesia, dan kemudian ada yang berangkat ke Penang untuk membelikan berbagai obat. Ada jasa titip, apa namanya? Apa ya? Kalau
jadi
ya.
obatnya daripada dokter ya?
Iya, ada obat dari dokter, ada suplemen-suplemen juga yang lainnya. Di Penang itu ternyata banyak, atau mungkin lebih murah juga, saya kurang tahu ya. Tapi banyak yang jasa titip seperti itu. Teman-teman juga cerita Penang itu wisata kesehatan ya. Ya,
Very
rumah
popular
sakit.
ini.
Ya, very popular ya di Indonesia. Daripada berobat di Indonesia, di sana katanya lebih bagus dan jauh lebih murah begitu kalau untuk orang Indonesia gitu, seperti itu katanya. Jadi mereka berbondong-bondong pergi ke Penang untuk berobat ya, termasuk salah satunya pembelian suplemen-suplemen ini.
Nah, suplemen inilah yang perlu diberi perhatian.
Ya.
Okay, especially kita perlu didik. Okay, we need to inform the public untuk membaca label. Kita tahu apa yang diambil dari setiap suplemen itu. Kerana one of the positive samples that we have is actually from the sensei. So some people go to the pharmacy, okay, ada yang pergi ke pharmacy ataupun ke apotek ya, apotek. Jadi ada yang pergi ke Chinese nephropathy,
medicine,
Chinese punya kedai.
Traditional medicine.
Jadi sampel yang positif itu sebenarnya adalah one of that is actually from the Chinese herbs. So kerana kesukaran ataupun kerana the plant looks similar. Okay, sebab itulah kita perlu sangat-sangat berhati-hati when we talk about this kind of chemicals and also species.
Okay, ya itu. Dari hadirin ada lagi pertanyaan?
Ada lagi?
Ada ini dari Philip.
Okay.
Ya.
Philip Homer.
Dari Pak Suhat ya.
Okey, daripada Pak Suhat, bagaimana mengenali bahan berbahaya secara sederhana. Okey, untuk mengenali bahan berbahaya ini adalah daripada pembacaan label. Okey, daripada label itu kita tahu what kind of plants, apa spesies yang ada dalam produk itu. Okay, contohnya dalam case Aristotleic acids, so we know that the Aristotleic acid, these are the plant that might contain Aristotleic acids. So for example, from Aristotleicaceae, there are many plants, okay, yang daripada genus atau spesies yang sama. Jadi kita perlu baca apa yang ada, okay, daripada pembacaan spesies pokok yang ada. Jadi kita boleh membantu untuk mengurangkan risiko dedahan terhadap bahan kimia yang berbahaya. Saya
ada resen Bu Sulit.
Ya. Kenapa Pak?
Ada yang resen.
Oh, raise hand. Kok nggak kelihatan ya di saya ya?
Ada dari Philip Homer.
Oh ya, silahkan Pak Philip.
Mungkin bisa di-unmute dulu Mas.
Halo, Bapak Philip tadi siapa?
Okay.
Oh ya, sudah terdengar. Silahkan Bapak.
Ya. Good morning, Mom. Jadi saya ingin bertanya, Bu, ini bertanya bahasa Inggris atau bahasa Indonesia?
Boleh dua-duanya.
Ya. Nowadays, many herbal products have a health risk, although many offer natural and helpful product, and many containing genotoxic and carcinogenic. You know, like we think this is dangerous, eat this as a lot of fat, drink this a lot of sugar. So What should we do or see before buying or consuming herbal product? We must have look at the ingredients or from the product to be consumed.
Okay.
Okay.
The same answer for the Dr. Suhad just now. Okay, Philip, thank you so much for the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think this is very important, also very important message for everyone to educate the public. Okay, how we know that one chemical, one product, kita beli satu supplement, satu jamu for example, kita sekadar beli ataupun kita sekadar we just only look at the testimonial or the comments from the TikTok or the Shopee say that, okay, I feel healthy, I feel I can lose weight after consume 1 week of this kind of products. So what we need to educate people, and for us also a reminder for us is actually to read the ingredients, because this is the first step that we can reduce the risk. Okay, when reduce the risk, meaning that we need to reduce the exposure. All right, the important message is actually to read the labels. Okay, read the plant. Okay, apa product, what type of plants that been used in that kind of supplements. Okay, when we know what we consume, but I believe that there are some plants or there are some products that don't write down. They don't really show what are the plant that they use. So if you have this kind of product, so don't buy that product because we don't know what inside that. Okay, so first is the most important thing is we need to read the label, know what you consume. So if you know what you consume, then you can reduce the risk to get or to be exposed to this kind of genotoxic and carcinogenic chemical. Is it clear, Phillips?
Tambahan lagi, Bu, apakah
Ya,
ada bahan tertentu yang harus dihindari saat membeli produk herbal tersebut? Iya, misalnya yang sangat berbahaya seperti itu.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much, Phillips. There are a lot of chemicals in the world, all right? But the fundamental is the dose make it poison, right? But when we talk about specifically, when we talk about genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals, okay, if you go through the literature, there are also a lot of class. Okay, there are many type of genotoxic carcinogenic chemicals, but the most popular one, is actually Aristotleic Acid. Because of what? Because we have enough evidence. At low dose, even though it's very low, it causes effects to human. All right, but of course, it's not only about Aristotleic acids. We can talk about Aflatoxin. We can talk about Paralysine alcohol, Alkylbenzene. There are a lot of things, but the key here is the moderation is the key. Okay, dalam Islam pun dah bagi tahu, we also need to understand that we need to take, we need to consume, or we need to do any type of jobs moderately. All right, if you consume supplements, for example, you know that the level of chemicals are much more higher as compared to if you consume in a natural form. Okay, berbeza kalau you ambil makan brokoli ataupun you ambil supplements yang contain broccoli. Okay, the level of the bioactive compounds might be like 1,000 times higher in a 1 tablet of broccoli supplements as compared to if you consume the broccoli, a few pieces of broccoli. So the moderation is the key, and we need to be careful about anything that we eat. If I talk that you cannot eat this, you cannot eat that, then there will be another problem, right? So the moderation is the key, and the dose make it poison.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Terima kasih.
Soalan daripada Nico. Bagaimana penanganan bahaya seperti chemical atau insecticide pada kebocoran sehingga terpapar di godang atau teras? What does it mean by this, Nico? Or perhaps Pak Mursyid or Mbak Sulis can...
Okay. Insecticide, pesticide.
Okay.
Jadi ini how to conduct or how to control the chemical in insecticide or pesticide if they bocor ya, tumpah atau ya atau terpapar di gudang dan teras serta tanah gitu.
So what we can do to
Yes.
to make sure that
Right.
we are not exposed to this kind of chemicals. Is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. So first, you need to know what type of chemical or insecticide that you are exposed to. Okay, because a specific insecticide or chemicals depends. All right, so depends. Okay, so we need to know what type of insecticide and how does chemical cause toxicity. All right. For example, if the chemical is evaporated in the air and the level is very high, and then of course you need to evacuate from that place. And there are a lot of calculation involved actually. I cannot just say that, okay, you just need to evacuate ataupun you lari daripada kawasan terdedah. All right. So you need to be careful. Okay, you need to be to assess the risk. Okay, perlu tahu apa chemical yang you exposed to and how does one chemical cause toxicity. Adakah melalui inhalation ataupun hanya akan terdedah melalui dedahan pada kulit ataupun consumption of a chemical. So it depends on what type of chemical that you're exposed to, and then you know that how to do the emergency response. For example, jika ada tumpahan ataupun ada letup, for example, if you read about the Bhopal tragedy, it's a chemical pesticide chemicals, a factory that being explode, and then the people dekat Bhopal tu, dekat India tu, exposed to one type of chemical that is cyanide. Okay, cyanide, and then this cyanide when inhaled and then bind to our to the oxygen, the molecule of the hemoglobin, and has problem with the oxygen transport. So something like that. So first of all, you need to know what type of chemical, and then how does one chemical cause toxicity. Apakah cara absorption tu, adakah dedahan dia secara exposure through inhalation, consumptions, ataupun through dermal exposure. So the exposure tu penting untuk tahu bagaimana that chemical might cause effects to human. So bila kita dah tahu, then we can further evaluate on how we can do to protect, what type of actions that we need to take. What type of action that we need to take to reduce the risk from exposure to that kind of insecticide or chemicals. Okay.
Yeah.
Mungkin Dr. Rozaini minum dulu. Break dulu ya. Kita jeda sekitar 5 menit dulu, Mas Tri.
Bisa.
Silakan Mas Tri, mungkin kita jeda dulu 5 menit. Istirahat sebentar, yang mau pakai di belakang ya bisa ya.
Iya. Sambil jeda, aku berdiskusi sedikit Bu Rozaini. Bu Rozaini mau ke belakang atau ke toilet?
Tidak.
Oh tidak. Ya, itu apakah bisa, kalau kebocoran itu ada di gudang begitu, apakah bisa ditutup dengan tanah begitu, atau we can add sand or
Program studi Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan sekarang sudah berada pada tahap skala internasional. Banyak kerjasama yang telah dirintis dan sekarang berkelanjutan setiap tahun. Pada usianya yang hampir 25 tahun, Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan sudah memiliki skala nasional dan internasional. Banyak kerjasama dengan luar negeri yang sudah kita jalankan selama bertahun-tahun ini. Studi internasional, joint research, joint education, dan lain-lain, itu adalah sebagai andalan kami di dalam mengembangkan program studi kesehatan lingkungan.
Visi Prodi Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan FKM UNDIP adalah menjadi program studi unggul dalam pendidikan, riset, dan pengabdian di tingkat internasional tahun 2024. Prodi Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan memiliki beberapa sarana dan prasarana yang memadai seperti laboratorium pendukung kegiatan, pembelajaran, dan kegiatan tridharma lainnya. Sarana dan prasarana baik yang ada di lingkungan, fakultas, universitas, dan jejaring kemitraan dengan instansi dalam negeri.
Kolom aja, bentuk kolom. Bulan apa? Persiapan.
Lulusan Prodi Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan tersebar hampir di seluruh wilayah di Indonesia dengan memiliki kompetensi dan profesionalisme kesehatan lingkungan yang mumpuni.
Perkenalkan, nama saya Dr. Andes Magister Kesehatan. Saya bangga menjadi alumni Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan UNDIP. Semoga Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan go internasional.
Saya Tuti Rahayu, kebetulan saya alumni MKL angkatan 2014. Yang saya dapatkan selama saya kuliah di MKL sangat banyak, kemudian ilmu yang saya dapat pastinya bermanfaat di tempat kerja saya, dan saya juga bergerak di bidang kependidikan, jadi ilmu itu yang saya dapatkan selama ini sangat-sangat bermanfaat, membantu kami dalam mengembangkan ilmu terutama kesehatan lingkungan.
Sejak 2020, Prodi Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan telah menjalin kerjasama dengan beberapa institusi yang ada di Malaysia dalam penyelenggaraan kegiatan Tridharma perguruan tinggi. Kerjasama dijalin dengan Universitas Malaysia Sabah, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, Universitas Selangor, Revenue Corporation SDN BHD, dan masih banyak lagi. Kegiatan yang dilakukan seperti penyelenggaraan seminar, visiting profesor, kunjungan lapangan mahasiswa ke Malaysia, joint education dan research, dan lain-lain.
Saya Fitni Hidayati dari Prodi Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan. Saya bangga menjadi mahasiswa kesehatan lingkungan. Dengan kurikulum pembelajaran dan fasilitas laboratorium yang dimiliki, bisa membantu saya dalam proses penelitian. Dengan memiliki tenaga pengajar dan pembimbing yang berkualitas, saya yakin ilmu yang saya dapatkan dapat menjadi modal dalam mengembangkan ilmu kesehatan lingkungan di masyarakat.
With this international program, I think it has benefited the student, and I think the Master in Public Health, UNDIP, is excellent, and the students are very active, and hopefully with this short course they have gained enough knowledge, and we hope to have further collaboration next year with UNDIP.
With the School of Public Health, I have been participating in the training of students in Magister in Environmental Health, and I find the program very interesting, and it covers a lot of topics in environmental health, in research and
Dengan networking yang luas, maka mahasiswa memiliki peluang dan kesempatan untuk mengikuti kegiatan yang dapat meningkatkan ilmu dan pengalamannya. Hal ini dapat memberikan dampak positif bagi mahasiswa.
Keunggulan program studi Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan adalah penyelesaian masalah kesehatan lingkungan secara global dan bercorak pesisir. Keunggulan ini didukung oleh dosen-dosen yang memiliki pendidikan doktor dalam dan luar negeri, akan menjamin memberikan jaminan mutu kepada Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan untuk melakukan penanganan kesehatan lingkungan secara prima, internasional, dan nasional. Oke, lanjut, Zilis.
Ya, terima kasih Pak Mursid.
Ya. Tanya kepada semua pelajar, kesehatan lingkungan ni, I would say the environmental health is very important field kerana implikasinya adalah kepada masyarakat. Okay. Yeah. Tanya kepada Pak Mursid dan tim kerana berjaya ya. Go international.
Yeah.
Okay. I think kita simpan dulu soalan. Okay. We shall continue with the lecture first before we go for the Q&A session. We will continue that later.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'll stop share. All right. So now we move to the next thing about our research. Okay, research in progress, because we already understand that okay, what are the genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals that might present in the supplements and also herbal products. So the first step, what we investigate is actually we investigate the number of the registered natural products in Malaysia containing plants known to produce genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals. So like what I said before, there are some chemicals that are not regulated in our law. All right. So there are some chemicals that already banned in the law, but there are a lot of other chemicals that is not in the law. So what we need, so what we did was we check on the okay, so we identify the number of plants based on the database that we have. So this is from the Malaysian Herbal monograph. So we have one database where when the company or one company need to produce or want to sell one product, so they need to declare what type of products, what type of plant that they use. So from this Malaysian Herbal monograph, so we screen what type of plants or how many plants or how many products that might contain products containing, for example, estragol, Aristotleic acids, and pyroxene alkaloid. All right. So what we found, so this is the species or family plants of the products. So this is just example. So this is the vernacular names. For example, Alpina galanga, for example, from the Lengkuas galanga. So these are all the vernacular name or the Malaysian name and how people use it. And then these are the possible genotoxic chemicals that might be exposed to this kind of products. So based on this screening on our database, we found that 274 products contain estragol. All right, and then we also found that there are about 180 products, registered product might contain the Aristotleic acids, and there are around 140 products might contain the pyroxene alkaloid. So based on the Quest search or the database that we have, so we know that there are a lot of products that might contain this kind of genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals based on the species of the plant that they use in their products. So what we did, the next step was where this is just a screening on how many products that might contain this kind of chemicals. Then if you remember from the last year lecture, so when we talk about risk assessment, so this is the steps. These are the steps on risk assessment based on the World Health Organization. So first you need to identify the hazard. So you need to then you need to characterize the hazard based on the dose response curve. And then you need to assess how much people consume the exposure, because when we talk about risk assessment, it's all about the toxicity and also it's about the exposure. And also then you characterize the risk. And what we did in our research, so this is the toxicological risk assessment strategy. So first step, we buy or we sample the plants or the supplements from the market. So it depends on for example, the species, depends on how people use. So different strategy depends on the endpoints. All right. So from the sampling, and from the samples that we took from the market, so it's also online and offline. There are some samples that we bought in a physical market, and some of the products that we bought from online market. And then we analyze analytically using we quantify how much the products using UPLC, ultra performance liquid chromatography, or liquid chromatography or LCMS, depends on the chemicals. So this is the example of the chromatogram. So for example, this is the case for Aristotleic acid. So we found that this is Aristotleic acid 2 and this is Aristotleic acid 1. So once we know that what this chemical positively contain this chemical, so we quantify how much per sample. And then based on this quantification, so we know that one sample, for example, contain 20 microgram of Aristotleic acids. And then we also analyze or we assess the acid, we estimate the daily intake. So how we assess the daily intake is actually based on the estimated, because in supplements, you know that there is a instruction, okay, take 2 tablets per day, for example, or 2 tablets 3 times a day, so something like that. So this is based on the instruction from the supplier. So we estimate how much people took one day, and then based on the calculation, and then we calculate the margin of exposure of the chemicals. We calculate the lifetime exposure and also short-term exposure. So for the genotoxic chemical, is actually how we calculate is actually based on the margin of exposure approach that I will talk about later. And also at the same time, we also use the risk-21. I will also introduce you this approach where we can easily communicate the risk. And then the question here is, do we need to manage the risk? So this is generally the strategy that you can do to assess the risk for the supplements or herbal product containing genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals. And the next one, I will present to you some of our results. So this is the result of aflatoxin. So we found that 25 out of 31 samples are positive, and this is the range. And this is a paper that already been submitted and is already under review process, and we hope that to get it published soon. So this is the result. This is aflatoxin from the supplements, yeah, not from the corn or the food products. And this is the result from the for estragol. So we found that 9 out of 30 samples were positive, and this is the range of the estragol present in the supplements. The Aristotleic acid, we found 5 out of 30 samples, and this is the range of the level of the Aristotleic acid that we found from the samples, and majority of the samples actually from the online market. And then the pyrrolidine alkaloid, we found 11 out of 30 samples positive with total pyrrolidine alkaloid. And this is the margin of exposure approach, where, because if you remember, for the genotoxic chemicals, is actually we need to, the dose response curve is actually the straight line. But for the margin of exposure approach, we use the software to calculate the benchmark dose lower level of 10. This is the same as the NOEL, no observed adverse effect level, if you know about NOEL. So this is about the calculation for, this is the same threshold, I would say. And then we divide it by the estimated daily intake, where if the margin of exposure is more than 10,000, so meaning that there is a low priority for risk management action. And then if the margin of exposure is less than 10,000, meaning that we need to manage the risk. All right, so we can use this margin of exposure approach to set priorities. All right, so for example, you have many chemicals that you want to assess. So what type of chemicals that you need to, what is the number one or the priority that you need to manage, for example? So we can use this margin of exposure approach. And this is the result, for example, for after the margin of exposure approach calculation. So we found that this is the aflatoxin. So we found that most of the chemicals that were positive are lower than 10,000. So meaning that we need to manage the risk. The same goes for the estragol. So if you look at this, is actually for the lifetime exposure. So for the lifetime exposure, all the samples need to be managed. But if you consume, for example, less than, for example, 2 weeks or 8 weeks per lifetime, so the margin of exposure is more than 10,000, so we don't need to manage the risk. But usually when we talk about margin of exposure, we talk about the worst case scenario. All right, so people will take, for example, this estragol the whole life, for example. So this is the margin of exposure. And for Aristotleic acids, so obviously all samples, if it is positive, we need to manage the risk. And you can see that margin of exposure is less than 20. So meaning that we really need to be careful, or we need to manage the exposure of this chemical. And this is the data for paralgin alkaloid. The same with, there are some chemicals, there are some samples that the margin is more than 10,000, but there are some chemicals, some samples that have the margin of exposure which is less than 10,000 for the lifetime exposure. So basically you can know, okay, basically when we talk about toxicology, it's not about the level. Okay, we found, okay, you found, for example, you are dealing with heavy metal, for example. Okay, you found the level of heavy metal in fish is 10 microgram, for example. So what does it mean? Is it risk or is it not risk? So why this risk assessment is important? Because we need to understand how much people expose. So how much people consume the fish will reflect the management part after that. So we are not talking about only the level, but we talk about the exposure to human. All right, so how much people consume the fish and how much people consume the supplements. Is it at risk or not? No risk at all. Then I will also introduce you about the new method approach, which is called as the risk assessment in 21st century, which is risk 21. So this is the approach by HESI, the Health and Environment Science Institute in the US. So the mission is to harmonize the approach on how we evaluate the chemicals based on the risk-based approach, right? So this is basically the risk 21 approach. So what we need is actually, of course, we need to formulate the problem, and then we need to know the exposure. So how to know the exposure? For example, you do the biomonitoring, or you do the probabilistic, or the you determine the level, for example, or you can use the other methods to know the exposure. And you also need to know the toxicity of chemicals. So based on the mode of action, or from the in vivo data, from in vitro data, or you can do the QSAR or TTC, threshold for toxicological concern method. So it depends on what type of data that you have. Then you need to really understand the toxicity and exposure. Then you evaluate the risk and the safety, and then you can draw you can map your chemical based on different colors. Okay, I will show you some example later, and also you can make conclusion either you need to manage or not to manage the risk. So this is the example on our calculation on the 3 types of genotoxic chemicals. So first one is Aristotleic acid, which is the blue one. So you know that based on this diagram, risk 31 diagram, so you know that the Aristotleic acid fell in the red zone. And then this is paralgin alkaloid, from the green to the red to yellow and red. And the estragon is around yellow to red. So basically, if you have many chemicals that you want to take care of, so you can do some kind of this kind of approach. And then you know that basically, generally, you know that from this picture or this figure, so you know that the first chemical that is priority for us to take care of is actually Aristotleic acids. And this is another example where we calculate the, we map, this is our study, this is for Aflatoxin B1. So our study is actually blue, so in the middle. And the other study is actually based on the level of aflatoxin from different countries. So what we want to try to say here is the range of exposure is big, all right? So it can come from the green to the red. But the main important thing is we need to do something, because there are some chemicals or some supplements, some samples fall into red category. And for us in Asia, it's around yellow to red. So whatever it is, we need to still manage the risk. But basically, when we present this kind of graph or figure, it is it's easier for people to understand. All right, when you look at this figure, so generally you already know that. So this is one way on how we communicate the risk. So basically, when you look at this, when you show this kind of figure, instead of you give the numbers and you put the graph, for example, if you put this kind of figure, so people know that, okay, the blue one, warna biru ini adalah yang paling bahaya, and then the next one would be perhaps the estragon or perhaps the paralgin alkaloid. All right, so these are all about our research. This is just a snapshot of some of the research that have been conducted in these few years. And there are some data that already published, but there are some also data is already ongoing for publication. And I would like to give the concluding remarks. I have few concluding remarks to end my my lecture today. The first one is phytotoxins in foods are generally recognized as safe at normal dietary intake. So what does it mean by this is, for example, if you talk about glucosinolate, okay, when we just take the broccoli or any plants that contain this kind of products, it's okay, no problem. Or you can take basil, for example, okay, in foods, it's generally safe. But when we concentrate the chemicals, all right, into supplements, then there is a concern. There is a toxicological concerns, right? And remember, the dose make it poison. And also, you can also remember that it's not only dose, there's also mechanism that cause toxicity, all right? The next one is, remember that there are situations for toxicological concerns. For example, we might increase the exposure if we prepare in a proper way, or for ferment foods and also supplements, for sensitive individuals, and also for the natural genotoxic and carcinogenics in plants. So we use a lot of plants in our daily life. So we need to be careful about what type of plant that we use in our daily consumptions. And to make sure that if you take it as food, that's fine, because you know that the level is low. But if you start taking them as supplements, then you need to be very careful. The third remarks is on the supplements and herbal products are widely available and used. And what we need to do as a researcher, especially in environmental health and also toxicology, we need to be very careful, and we need to be, all this kind of product need to be scientifically evaluated before they are allowed in the market. I know it is not easy to get it done, but we should start somewhere, okay? And then last but not least, okay, I have introduced you the margin of exposure approach. So we can use this approach to set priorities for risk management action, and you can use the risk 21 approach to communicate the risk. And last but not least, I would like to acknowledge a lot of people, especially my postgraduate students. I think some of them are here together with us today. So thank you so much for my postgraduate students. Some of them already graduated. Soleha and also Firdaus already graduated from their master in environmental health. And also another Azra finishing her PhD, inshallah soon. Please pray for her. And also I have many collaborators that I would like to thank for Dr. Rohi, Professor Rohi, Professor Amin, Dr. Hassan, Dr. Raj, that been with me for these few years to conduct this kind of study, because we know that this is important, not only for Malaysia, but also to our neighboring countries. And also this research is not possible without the grant from the government. This is the grant from the Ministry of Higher Education, and also from the UPM itself, from my university. So with that, I would like to end my lecture with one quote that I always use this quote when I present my research in progress, where I believe that coming together is beginning. So when we come together, when Pak Mursid and the team came to Malaysia, is a beginning. And we have been staying together for this 1 to 2 years together, and also with the Malaysian Society of Toxicology. It's a progress, and we should work together. Is success. So I believe that we should work together, because the success of the research is not only we publish the article, it's not only that, but sharing, and also when we use the knowledge in a correct way is one of the blessing and also the success things in academia, I would say. So with that, if you have, we can have a Q&A session. I think we have time until 12 today. Yes, Pak Mursid. And also, if you have further question, and if you want to do, more research together, or if you have specific question that you want to ask, or you want to have my paper, for example, just send me an email at rozainiabdullah@upm.edu.my. With that, Thank you so much, everyone, for your kind of, attention, and also we welcome for discussion.
Iya, oke. Terima kasih Ibu Rozaini, Ibu Rozaini Abdullah. Para hadirin, silahkan untuk bertanya kembali. Kami buka sesi diskusi lagi. Silahkan untuk raise hand atau menulis chat di room chatnya. Kami persilahkan.
Sambil soalan yang tadi belum terjawab.
Oh ya, ada.
Dari Ratna Dewi.
Tadi sudah dibahas ya.
Yang Ratna Dewi belum ya?
Yang terpapar ini Niko sama Ratna hampir sama ya. Tentang sorry. Kalau Ratnanya belum ya. Berapa lama masa paparan dari bahan makanan sehingga seseorang dapat mengalami efek dari bahan tersebut.
Okay.
How long?
How long? Okay, it depends, yeah.
Yes, depends.
Okay, it depends. Okay, in toxicology or general in environmental health, you know that once we're exposed to chemical, it can be either acute toxicity or chronic toxicity. Okay, acute and chronic, it depends on how much you have been exposed to. So usually when we talk about acute toxicity, okay, biasanya adalah kesan jangka masa pendek where you exposed to a chemical in high dose. Alright, so dalam masa berapa minit saja sudah mendapat kesan yang begitu. But when we talk about genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals, okay, usually we talk about the chronic exposure. Alright, sampai bila berapa lama orang yang makan, yang consume this kind of products get cancer, for example. Okay, for Aristotleic Acid, okay, we already have data less than 10 years. To have kidney damage, right? But for the other type of cancer, it depends, all right, what type of cancer and how much you consume. So for example, perhaps for liver cancer, perhaps you need 30 years. So it all depends on type of chemical, what are the mechanism of action, okay, bagaimana daripada one chemical cause the DNA adduct, for example, and then bila tak ada repair, there is no repair mechanism, and then form another mutation, and then another mutation, and finally get cancer. So it depends on type of products, type of chemical that you expose to, and how much that you consume. Okay, I hope I answer it. And also Nico, regarding the insecticide, bagaimana untuk reduce the bau? Because I'm not an expert in insecticide, but basically, because we have also a lot of cases for not only insecticide, for the chemical dumping. If you know about the one issue that happened in 2019 or 2020, I think 2019, I think. So we have a very big issue for environmental issue on the dumping of chemicals to the environment. Okay, it's not only you can just put the tanah or sand on top of the chemical itself. So you need to get it, you need to remove it from that place, and then you need to dump it in a proper way. So you cannot just, kalau insecticide been exposed to, then it is not enough just to cover with sand. This is what I can say. All right, you need to correct, or you need to remove it from that place and then dispose it in a proper way, especially for when we are dealing with scheduled waste. This is generally what I can say. But in detail, but I don't know about what type of chemical that been exposed to. Adakah bahaya? Adakah hanya sekadar bau yang busuk? Ataupun ia akan meninggalkan kesan yang buruk kepada kesihatan manusia dan kesihatan lingkungan, kesihatan environmental health. To the environment also, we need to take care of, right? When we talk about insecticide, there are a lot of things, okay? We can talk about the endocrine disruptors, we can talk about the carcinogenicity, we can talk about the reprotoxicity. So there are a lot of things that we need to really look into. So yang paling penting adalah you kena tahu apa chemicals yang ada pada that insecticide. Alright?
Okay. Yang berikutnya dari Levina Safa ya, how to communicate the risk ya, for the carcinogenic ya, for the producer.
Okay.
and how to communicate, and for the monitoring and survey, is it effective to reduce the product, the hazard product? Okay.
Sangat tepat. Okay. When we talk about how we communicate the risk, so one way to communicate the risk, you can use the risk 21 approach because it's easier. I would say that when you look at this, it is, you tengok je, you dah boleh faham apa maksud di sebalik that figure. And then of course, monitoring and survey and also banning of the product by the government is one of the most effective way. Okay, we talk about, for example, the ikan buntal. Okay, we talk about ikan buntal. We talk about this issue when I have a training in Singapore. And then what Singapore did, sebab dia tak ada in Singapore, there is none of the cases due to tetrodotoxin. So meaning that here, what they did is actually they banned from the selling of the products. Daripada tangkap ikan pun tak boleh, and then daripada jual pun tak boleh, and you cannot buy even in Singapore. So if they found you are guilty for selling or or catching the fish, or you buy the fish, then you will be penalized by the government. It is very effective in Singapore. So what we need to do, so perhaps we need to engage with government, and then they can do something that is very terus ban, and then they did it, and they finally reduced the risk to get for the exposure to tetrodotoxin.
Dilarang begitu dijual, dilarang, diambil pun, ditangkap pun tidak boleh dilarang semua.
I can imagine that it is a challenge for us to conduct that kind of act in Malaysia, but we should do something. We cannot just tell them, okay, you can still sell the products, the ikan buntal, for example, but we know that the adverse effects, you can die because of the exposure to that kind of toxin.
Yeah, betul. It's right. Yes, next question from Hansen. How large a dose can cause aflatoxin to become genotoxic and AFB1?
And what is the gold standard for genotoxic for aflatoxin? All right, Hansen, thank you so much for your questions. It's very interesting. Okay, how large the cause? Because in aflatoxin, if I have Soleha here, Soleha, are you here? My student. Let me see.
Yeah.
So, Soleha, can you talk or you cannot? Yeah, because now she's working with the Ministry of Health after she finished her master. Soleha, can you talk or you cannot? She's the one who conduct the study for aflatoxin. All right, and for aflatoxin, we have the benchmark dose. We already have the safe level, but I don't remember by heart. So if Soleha can write something, if you can talk, the level of the benchmark dose, or we call that a threshold dose for the aflatoxin. B1, you can check from her paper. I think it's the one that we published, or one already been published. So there is a benchmark dose for exposure to aflatoxin. So meaning that you cannot exceed the level of aflatoxin exposure. If you exceed that, then you will have potential to get the HCC in humans. And then the next question is, what is the gold standard? Okay. So there is for the gold standard for genotoxic chemicals, it's not only for the aflatoxin. All right, for genotoxic chemicals, if you want to know either your chemical, because for aflatoxin, we already know that it is a genotoxic and carcinogenic. So we don't need to conduct any study, any toxicity study. But if you have one new chemical, okay, so you want to produce new chemical and you want to use that chemical, for example, in the food, as a flavoring or flavoring agent. Okay, you're gonna chemical yang baru ni untuk letak dalam food, kata okay, bila akan enhance the rasa or the taste of the food, or it can longer the lifetime of the shelf life of the food itself. Okay, this new product, and if you want to conduct the study for genotoxicity, there is a guideline, a gold standard for the genotoxic chemicals. So for example, you need to run the cytotoxicity data, you need to cytotoxicity experiment, you need to conduct, for example, genotoxicity mutation assay. For example, you need to run the EMS test. There are many. You can check the OECD guideline, Organization for Economical Cooperation Development, so OECD guideline for genotoxic and carcinogenic chemicals. So there is a standard. So there are few assays that you need to conduct for chemical to know that either this chemical is genotoxic or not genotoxic. All right. I hope that I answer you, Hansen.
Larasati, Raisen.
Oke.
Yes,
Tempat
Larasati.
saya nggak kelihatan. Ya, silahkan Larasati.
Okay, good morning, Dr. Sulis and Dr. Rozaini Abdullah. Thank you for the presentation. That's really good presentation, and it's really interesting for me because I like the topic about herbal supplements that we found it really plenty of using in Indonesia. So I would like to ask. The first question is about, I'm the one that comes from a Japanese family who likes herbal traditional drinks. And for example, jamu, you know it, ginger powder. And what if a herbal chemical added by preservatives, it can make chemical reactions that affects our health. Maybe you can give your point of view. Are drinking for example, are drinking herbal drinks is safer than we consume the supplements, or it has the same effect with the supplements? Yeah. And the second question is about, for example, we buy a product, supplement in doctor, and they said that the product is safe, but is it possible that the product become unsafe if we keep those products too long in our homes? Is there any possible chemical toxins there? Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, Larasati. But for the first question, you talk about herbal supplements and herbal versus supplements. Does it has the same effects? Is it when you talk about effects on the toxicity or the benefits?
The first one, I need you to give clarification about the benefits and also the toxicity, the same as the toxicity, because Indonesian people consider that consuming herbal drinks is safer than you consume supplements.
Okay. All right. So this is the thing that we learn as environmental health students and also in toxicology. All right. So the fundamental is the dose make it poison. Okay, we cannot just say that herbal drinks is safer than the supplements. So we cannot just say generally like that. All right, because we need to know. So what are the chemicals that present in that herbal drinks, and what are the chemicals that present in that supplements? All right. So you need to know, okay, when you are comparing things, you need to compare an apple with apple. You cannot compare the apple with durians, something like that. Okay. Jadinya, okay, when you want to compare either it is more beneficial, it is more safer, or is it more toxic as compared to supplements? So it depends on what are the chemicals that present in that kind of products. Okay, for example, I give you example. Okay, you have one drinks. Okay, one tea drinks. Okay, tea drinks containing Aristotleic acid plants. All right, even though it's only one leaf of the plant in that drinks, and you compare with supplements containing other type of plants, that is, for example, the tongkat ali or other types of plants. So obviously, if you drink the tea containing Aristotleic acid, is much more toxic much more dangerous as compared to supplements. So I cannot just simply say that this is more safe or this is not safe. No, it depends on what type of chemical. And the general thing about toxicology, the dose make it poison, right? So you need to know what type of chemical and what are the dose that you exposed to. Then you can compare. So then you can compare, for example, in my case just now, okay, when we compare the level of different type of chemical, and we have like we put in one figure, and then you can really compare. Okay, then we know that okay, Aristotleic acid is the most dangerous that we need to take care of, something like that. And then this question number 2, is it from the medication from doctor? Is it safe or unsafe if you store it in longer period of time? So I believe that all medications or medicines that been given by the doctors are safe. Okay, if we consume it in a correct way. And also in all drugs, they have expiry dates. All right. So for example, one drugs you can store up to, for example, 1 year. And after 1 year, you cannot consume it. You need to give it back to the, you need to dispose it in the correct way. You cannot just throw it in the environment, no, a big no. So bring it back to hospital and give them, and then they will dispose it for you, for example. So you need to be careful, okay? Please consume it in a right dosage and also at the right timing. All right. Of course, after the expiry date, there might be any interaction, or we don't know what happened to the drugs after the expiry dates. All right. So I believe that if we consume the drugs that be given by the hospital and the certified doctors, it should be safe, because the drugs, before it can be sold in the market, it can be in the market, they need to undergo a lot of process, the clinical trial and a lot of safety evaluation before they can define as a drugs or medications, different than the supplements and the herbal medicines. So it's totally different. We don't need the clinical trial. We don't need the stringent safety evaluation as compared to the drugs that been given by the hospital. So that's why I can say that, okay, the drugs are safe based on your disease. Okay, you janganlah makan ubat untuk darah tinggi tapi you tak ada darah tinggi. Of course, it will be dangerous to yourself. Okay, so read the label and then follow the guidelines or instruction by the doctors and also the pharmacists. Right?
Okay.
Thank you, Larasati.
Thank you,
Very good question.
Iya. Jadi konsumsi obat itu harus tepat ya, sesuai
betul.
dengan yang diresepkan dokter. 3 kali sehari, 2 tablet atau bagaimana gitu ya,
Iya,
dokter
betul.
ya. Oke. Ada lagi mungkin pertanyaan terkait dengan toksikologi dari Ibu Rozaini ini? Adakah yang mau bertanya? Karena di Indonesia ini banyak produksi jamu, Bu Rozaini.
Iya.
Jadi kita terbiasa konsum jamu itu ada yang hampir tiap hari, ya, karena mudah didapat dan juga ada juga yang bentuk. Nah, yang berbahaya ini adalah bentuk jamu yang sudah ditambahi dengan obat-obatan yang terlarang misalnya, itu seperti itu. Ada juga yang biar cespleng atau namanya apa bahasa Inggrisnya, langsung memberikan efek ya. Jadi ada yang begitu diminum sakit di badan hilang semua.
Hilang. Wow.
Ya. Jadi
bahaya tuh,
ya itu ya. Jadi kata orang Indonesia cespleng gitu ya. Jadi langsung memiliki efek, sehingga itu sangat dicari begitu. Jadi jamu-jamu seperti itu. Nah, itu yang seringkali didapatkan ada tambahan obat-obatan yang terlarang di dalam jamu-jamu ini.
Itu yang sangat bahaya, dan kita sebagai penyelidik perlu membuat sesuatu. Okay, we need to do something to help our people to reduce the risk. So how to reduce the risk is actually to reduce the exposure. Tapi itulah perlu faham kenapa jangan buat begini, jangan main makan sahaja. Begitulah. Education itu sangat penting ya.
Iya, betul. Kemudian kemudian juga ada tambahan preservatif ya, pengawet itu pada jamu-jamu begitu yang sudah siap minum itu juga berbahaya ya, Bu Abdullah ya. Bu Rozaini. Jadi memberikan dampak jangka panjang gitu ya, yang nantinya juga berakibat pada kesehatan.
Benar.
Seringkali produk jamu ini diminum karena dari mulut ke mulut, apa namanya? Disampaikan dari satu orang ke orang lain, ya, yang menunjuk, ya, promosinya dari bagus loh begitu ya, terus kemudian dikonsum oleh orang
Inilah
lain.
yang kita perlu didik kita punya masyarakat, ya,
betul.
itu sangat bahaya. Sebabnya itulah contoh yang terdekat yang saya ada, okay, my mother, okay, my own mother, okay, took a supplement, okay, she bought it from Facebook. Okay, dia kata, okay, doktor ni kata sangat baik untuk kesihatan wanita. She didn't tell me, okay, to buy that supplement. She asked my sister to buy it for her, and then if she told me, and then obviously I will say that no, you cannot buy, okay, because you know that I will not allow that. But she said that the doctor said that it's good, it is, and some people say that you know, the testimonial, the promoter say that okay, ini baik untuk wanita, something like that. But later, what happened was, I think she finished one papan, one sachet, I think I would say, and then she told me she has problem with bleeding. She's already menopause. And then there's bleeding, and then she said that why? And then I told her, okay, let's check. And then when we check, and then I didn't know yet, ya, masa tu dia sudah ambil that chemical. I don't know, seriously. And then bila doktor tanya, okay, apa yang makcik buat? Okay, apa makcik ada ambil ubat ke? And then she told the doctor. And then I told my mom, why you do this? And then she said something like that. And what happened? Luckily, okay, and after that she need to remove her uterus. Alright, rahim tu perlu dibuang, tapi it's okay because she's already menopause. And then what the doctor concern is, if we don't remove, there might be another problem. So we don't want, for example, the cancer formation, something like that, because supposedly there is no blood at all after the you know, the process. So but there's still bloody, and then they took samples, and then they see the cells, and then they found that there's some abnormality, but it's not cancer. Luckily it's not cancer, alhamdulillah. But this is the thing. All right, so we need to be very careful also with our family members. Okay, please be careful with whatever you take, because the consequences is big. Alright, nanti jangan tak nak makan ubat doktor, kata nanti ada penyakit lain lah whatsoever. So but we need to educate our public. This is very, very important. This is very close, you know, example for my mother, okay, because she took the supplements, and I'm the one who do research on supplements, something like that. So I need to do more. Yeah, so this is a reminder for me too. It's not only to talk about other people, with other people, but also to my family members. We also need to educate them, something like that.
Ya, harus memberi edukasi, ya, pengetahuan pada, karena yang tahu tentang kesehatan kita yang berkecimpung di kesehatan, ya. Ternyata our family member don't know about public health. Ya, konsumsi obat-obat terlarang tersebut. Kemudian menurut Ibu Rozaini, misalnya kita mengkonsumsi bahan yang masih segar seperti brokoli, itu lebih aman ketimbang kita mengkonsumsi suplemen yang ekstrak hanya ekstrak dari brokoli begitu, ya, apa namanya, ekstrak murni begitu dari brokoli, ya.
Benar.
Ya.
Jika kita makan secara natural as food, it's good, it's okay. Because remember the fundamental, the dose make poison.
Yeah.
Okay, the level of the chemicals in the broccoli might give benefits to ourselves. Tapi bila di-concentrated dalam satu tablet, itulah masalahnya. Bila akan timbul selepas itu.
Oke, ya. Jadi kita harus hati-hati malah dengan yang suplemen-suplemen tersebut, ya. Lebih baik makan yang food
natural,
alami,
ya, betul.
Tapi it depends, ya. Jika seseorang ada masalah kesihatan, contohnya you have deficiency in certain vitamin, right? Dalam body you don't have enough vitamin, specific vitamin, you have deficiency, then it's for you to take that supplement.
Yeah.
Sebab you tak cukup dalam badan, you have deficiency in that in your body, then you can take supplements. But for the general health, if we are healthy, so if we eat food, we eat fruits, we eat vegetables every day. So I don't think we need any supplements for our health benefits. So it's enough for us to have cukup piramid makanannya, cukup nutrientsnya, cukup vitaminsnya. Jadi itu sudah cukup untuk menjaga kesihatan kita. Tidak perlulah ambil additional supplements.
Iya, betul. Ya, jadi cukup dengan kalau sudah cukup asupan makanan semua lengkap begitu ya, maka tidak perlu suplemen ya. Tapi kalau memang kita mengalami kekurangan vitamin, kita bisa menambahkan dari suplemen itu begitu ya. Begitu pula juga kita harus tahu obat apa yang kita konsumsi isinya apa gitu ya. Karena kalau tidak tahu isinya apa itu sangat membahayakan. Jadi jangan asal tadi ya dari testimoni ikut-ikutan begitu ya, karena dampaknya bisa panjang gitu ya.
Benar.
Ya. Ya, ini tidak ada lagi pertanyaan ataukah masih ada lagi diskusi kita hari ini untuk Ibu? Cukup.
Kayaknya kemarin memang ada pengalaman Dr. Rozaini ketika tahun lalu ya kita bersama mahasiswa di Putra Jaya itu. Ada 2 student kami yang keracunan jamur itu.
Oh ya?
Iya, sampai Jailina bingung juga akan komplain di hotel itu. Kelihatannya apakah tidak ada pengawasan terkait dengan kualitas untuk breakfast yang ada di hotel-hotel itu. Itu sempat hampir meninggal.
Ya? Apa jenis jamu yang diambil?
Sejenis apa ya, karena kan konsumsi di hotel itu ya yang berwarna hitam itu ya mungkin ya dari
perlu lihat apa
itu di Putra Jaya itu yang hotel berbintang 4 itu ya. Tapi terjadi ya. Alhamdulillah masih tertolong.
masih sehat ya, masih ya sangat ya gitu. Kadang-kadang susah, it's difficult for us to really control. Yeah, but for us it's just to know what we consume. Perlu baca bismillah sebelum makan. Ya.
Iya, perlu bismillah.
Betul.
Ya, cukup.
Oke ya. Oke, terima kasih banyak Ibu Rozaini Abdullah yang sudah menyediakan waktunya untuk visiting lecturer, visiting professor dan visiting lecturer pada hari ini. Kalau di Semarang cuaca cerah hari ini, di Kuala Lumpur ya. Ini juga saya harapkan juga cerah ya Ibu ya.
Cerah.
Cerah sekali.
Insyaallah ya.
Semoga kita tetap akan saling berbagi untuk para mahasiswa yang ada di Magister Kesehatan Lingkungan ataupun juga nanti yang ada di Universitas Putra Malaysia ini ya. Ya, saya rasa kita cukupkan dulu untuk sesi visiting lecturer dan visiting professor pada hari ini. Saya kembalikan kepada Pak Mursid. Ya, silakan Pak Mursid, terima kasih banyak.
Okay, sebelum Pak Mursid, saya berkata sedikit closing.
Ya, silakan. Ya, silakan. Ya.
Okay, thank you so much sekali lagi kepada Ibu Sulis dan also Pak Mursid kerana sudi menjemput saya ke kuliah tamu untuk pelajar mahasiswa di UNDIP. Sekali lagi, I'm very grateful, I'm very humble to share my little bit of my knowledge. Sedikit sahaja knowledge saya ada. Saya bukanlah seorang yang terlalu pakar dalam bidang, tapi this is what we've been conducting for the past few years, and I believe that this is the beauty of research where we connect with people. Okay, then the beauty of the knowledge is when we transfer the knowledge and also people use it in a correct way. So this is amal jariah yang berpanjangan lah insyaAllah.
Amin.
Jadi saya doakan kepada semua pelajar di Universitas Diponegoro semuanya berjaya. And please remember that the research that you are conducting now, okay, any type of research in environmental health is important. Okay, it means something. So kerana saya I believe that some student, they think that, okay, this is research from my supervisor. My supervisor asked me to do this. No, it's not like that. So, so remember that your research means something. So your research will help, the benefits will help the public, for example, especially in combating the environmental health problem in perhaps in our country and also perhaps in the worldwide. We never know who are going to cite our paper, who are going to read our papers and put that as their, for example, amalan atau nasihat, dan dia akan gunakan daripada kita punya research, something like that. So all the best to all students, and hopefully we can do more after this.
I hope.
And also research collaboration is important, and then that we can really do some research, the impact research after this, especially in toxicology. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Terima kasih Prof. Rozaini, Bu Sulis, dan mahasiswa sekalian sudah join untuk kegiatan pada pagi hari ini. Kegiatan seperti ini akan berlangsung secara kontinu ya, secara terus-menerus begitu. Jadi kita selalu kolaborasi, baik itu skala regional kita dengan teman-teman Malaysia, dengan teman-teman Taiwan, kemudian dengan Australia ya, kemarin juga sempat join. Dan ada juga harapan dengan Birmingham University ya, ini yang masih kita ingin rintis ya. Mohon maaf ketika kalau kami dalam menyelenggarakan kegiatan ini ada yang kurang berkenan. Salam hormat untuk Prof. Talib ya, Bu Rozaini. Kita sampaikan beliau, nanti kapan-kapan kita jemput kembali ya untuk semua. Baik, kita akhiri. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Terima kasih semua.
Assalamualaikum.